If it's a very short note that's asking for financial remuneration, then that means the intent was just a kidnap for profit.
And I think in this case, with these short ransom letters, there's nothing for them to gain.
What is there to lose?
Photographs, 2 videos, released to the entire country by the FBI director himself on February 10th, as proof of what happened to Nancy Guthrie. One night, one masked man, one doorbell camera. That is what Kash Patel told you. He was not telling you everything, because there is no subscription on that camera. No timestamp embedded in the footage. And sources now confirmed to ABC News, CBS News, and NBC News have established that at least one of those photographs was not taken on February 1st, the night Nancy disappeared. The image showing the suspect without a backpack, without a visible holster, walking up to her front door, that image was captured on a different day entirely. A day before the abduction. The FBI knew that when they released it. They took footage from 2 separate dates, packaged it together, and presented it to the world as a single night. They let every journalist, every investigator, every member of the public watching that press conference walk away believing this man showed up once. He did not show up once. He came back. And that one fact, that single, buried, deliberately obscured fact, dismantles the most comfortable explanation for this crime. The one that lets everyone sleep at night. That this was random. A stranger. A drifter who drove past the wrong house on the wrong night and made a decision in the dark. Random strangers do not come back. They do not study a house, walk away, and return days later carrying a backpack, a loaded gun, and the specific knowledge of where one 84-year-old woman sleeps alone. That is not a crime of impulse. That is a mission. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 25 days. She is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She takes daily medication. Her mobility is limited, but her mind, her family will tell you, is completely intact. Sharp, present, aware of everything around her. She has lived in the same house in the Catalina foothills, north of Tucson, since 1985. 41 years on the same quiet desert roads. The same neighbors, the same coyotes crying into the same dark sky. She is not a public figure. She does not have a security detail. She is a grandmother who went to church on Sundays and had dinner with her daughter every Friday night. Her name was Nancy Ellen long before it was Nancy Guthrie. Born January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She came to Tucson in the early 1970s. Her husband Charles died in 1988, at 49, during a mining exploration trip in Mexico. She raised 3 children alone after that. Savannah, who became co-anchor of the Today Show, Annie, a writer and artist still living in Tucson, and Cameron, who is also in the area. For decades, she lived quietly. No profile, no enemies anyone will name publicly. The kind of woman who should reach 90 in the same house she has always lived in, surrounded by the same people who have always loved her. On the night of January 31st, 2026, someone took her from that house, and no one has found her since. Here is what the last hours of that evening looked like. Nancy had dinner at her daughter Annie's home on the evening of January 31st. Annie and her husband were there. They ate. They played games. A normal Friday night for a family that did this regularly. At some point between 9:30 and 9:50 p.m., Annie's husband drove Nancy the 4 miles back to her house in the Catalina foothills. He says he walked her in. He says he confirmed she was safely inside. Then he drove home. For miles. 10 minutes. No traffic at that hour. For the next several hours, nothing. Or nothing we can confirm. Then, at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, Nancy's Nest doorbell camera went offline. Not a power failure. Not a glitch. Someone physically disconnected it. At 2:12 a.m., A second camera on the property registered motion, classified by the system as a person. But Nancy had no active subscription on her cameras. No footage was saved. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker application disconnected from her phone. That connection drops when a phone is destroyed or moved beyond Bluetooth range, or when the person wearing the pacemaker is carried far enough away that the signal cannot reach the device left behind. 41 minutes. From the moment the camera went dark to the moment her pacemaker signal vanished. 41 minutes inside that house. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente told Fox News that 41 minutes is not the timeline of a burglary. Burglars move in under 10. 41 minutes is someone managing a person, controlling a situation, waiting possibly for a second vehicle, possibly for a second person before moving. At noon the following day, her family called in the missing persons report when Nancy did not appear for her virtual church service. 12 hours of head start. 12 hours before anyone knew she was gone. In 12 hours, you can reach Los Angeles. You can reach El Paso. You can reach the Mexican border in under 90 minutes from Tucson. Now let me tell you what law enforcement found when they arrived at that house. Blood on the porch, confirmed to be Nancy's. Signs of disturbance near the entrance. The doorbell camera had been physically removed from its mount. Inside the home, biological evidence. DNA that does not belong to Nancy. Does not belong to anyone in her family. Does not belong to anyone in her known circle. The sheriff's department has not said where in the house this DNA was recovered. What they have said is that a private lab in Florida is analyzing it, and that there is a concern the sample may not yield a clean profile because it is mixed with Nancy's own DNA. That kind of mixing biological material from two people fused together happens during sustained physical contact, during a struggle, during a forced removal from a space where someone did not want to go. Approximately 2 miles from the house, in a field near a roadside, investigators found a glove. One of 16 recovered during the search, but the others belonged to investigators who had discarded theirs during evidence collection. This one was different. It visually matched the gloves worn by the suspect in the doorbell footage. DNA from an unknown male was extracted from inside it. That profile was run through CODIS, the FBI's National Criminal Database. No match. It was also compared to the DNA found inside the house. No match there either. 2 profiles, 2 unknown males, 2 people who left biological evidence at or near the scene of this crime. The sheriff has said, more than once, that he has not ruled out multiple suspects. Now look at the footage itself. In the photographs where the suspect is carrying his backpack, you can see the full kit. Black ski mask, black nitrile gloves, dark clothing, sneakers, a belly band holster for a handgun, worn near the center of his waist in an unusual position. Former firearms expert John Correa told NBC News that the holster appears to be a cheap, universal fit model, not the gear of a trained professional. The backpack is a black 25-liter Ozark trail hiker pack, sold exclusively at Walmart. CBS News was first to report it. The sheriff called it one of the most promising leads in the case. Walmart has since provided purchase records for every Ozark trail hiker pack sold across Arizona in the months prior, and investigators are currently reviewing store security footage to connect those sales to faces. The ski mask may also have come from Walmart. The suspect's full clothing load, everything he was wearing, probably cost under $100. A kidnapping assembled from the clearance aisle of the country's largest retailer. If you built a profile from the gear alone, low cost, low sophistication, easily disposable, you would land on impulsive. You would land on opportunistic. You would not land on calculated. But then there is the other photograph. The one from before the backpack. The one from the earlier visit. In that image, the suspect is dressed similarly but carries nothing. He is standing at her door without equipment, without a weapon visible, without any indication he is about to take anyone. He is looking at the camera. And one theory circulating among sources familiar with the investigation is that he spotted the camera, got spooked, and left. That he came back on February 1st prepared specifically to disable it. That theory has one problem. A stranger who spots a camera and gets nervous does not come back to the same house. A stranger walks away and finds a different house, one without cameras, one without a system he has to defeat. The only person who returns to a camera-equipped house after discovering that camera is someone for whom that specific house is the only acceptable target. Someone for whom Nancy Guthrie cannot be substituted by anyone else at any other address. That is not a stranger. That is someone who needed her. And there is a date the public still has not been given a real explanation for. The Pima County Sheriff's Department asked residents to submit any surveillance footage going back to January 1st. But they did not flag the entire month. They flagged two specific dates. January 31st, the night Nancy disappeared, and January 11th, between 9 p.m. and midnight. January 31st makes sense. January 11th has never been explained. No press conference has addressed it. No major outlet has reported on what investigators believe happened on that date in that 3-hour window, 20 days before the abduction. It is sitting there in the public record, flagged by the Sheriff's Department, completely unaddressed. If the suspect was active in this neighborhood on January 11th, the preparation timeline stretches back at least 3 weeks before Nancy was taken. 3 weeks of surveillance. 3 weeks of learning that house, that street, that woman's routine. Then there is January 23rd, 8 days before Nancy vanished. A homeowner in Tucson posted a video to the Ring Neighbors app. A man had appeared at their front door at 3:30 a.m. and again at 5 a.m. The house is 6.5 miles from Nancy's home. What the man was doing on camera is the detail that stops you cold. He was walking backward, not stumbling, not disoriented, deliberately reversing his body into the camera's detection zone so that the lens would capture the back of his head during the 1 to 2 second window that consumer cameras need before they begin actively recording. When the homeowner's dogs barked, the man ran. TMZ confirmed the FBI is treating this footage as a credible lead. The backpack he was carrying appeared visually identical to the Ozark trail pack later seen on Nancy's porch. Let me explain exactly what walking backward means, because this is the line that divides someone who commits a crime from someone who engineered one. Ring cameras and Nest cameras do not record continuously. They sleep. They use passive infrared sensors to detect body heat and movement. When the sensor triggers, the processor wakes up. The lens adjusts to the low-light environment. The Wi-Fi module establishes a connection with the cloud server. That process takes 1 to 2 seconds. If you walk toward a camera normally, your face is captured in those first frames, during the boot-up window before the system is fully active. If you walk backward, those critical opening frames show nothing but the back of your hood. By the time the lens is recording cleanly, you are already turned away. You are using your own body as a countermeasure against hardware latency. Nobody stumbles onto that technique. Nobody invents it in the moment while standing on a stranger's porch at 3:30 in the morning. This is behavior that was researched, practiced, and deliberately deployed. Someone studied how these cameras work, identified their specific vulnerability, and built a physical response to it. And when the dog barked, when the instinct of every human being would be to spin toward the sound, this man did not turn around. He fled while maintaining his backward position. He suppressed that reflex completely. He would rather fall than give the camera a single usable frame of his face. That is not nerves. That is rehearsed discipline. That is someone who has done this before, or practiced it enough that it has become automatic. The house on January 23rd was 6.5 miles from Nancy's home. Both properties sit in the northern Tucson suburbs. Both are isolated desert lots with long driveways and minimal street lighting. The same dark sky ordinances, the same gravel, the same response time from local police. Investigators call this a buffer zone, close enough to replicate the exact conditions of the target environment. Far enough that being caught there creates no immediate connection to the real objective. He was not testing a random house. He was running a dress rehearsal for a specific one. Now compare the man on January 23rd to the man on February 1st. On January 23rd, he is hunched, paranoid, counting pixels. Every movement is about not being seen. On February 1st, he walks forward, upright, arms loose. He approaches Nancy's door and reaches toward the camera with the ease of someone who has performed that motion 100 times. An analyst described it as habitual, like reaching for a light switch in a room you know by heart. 8 days separate those two performances. 8 days and a successful rehearsal. A test that proved his method worked, that the camera did not catch him, that the dogs barked and no one came. He walked away from January 23rd knowing he was invisible. That knowledge is what you see in his body on February 1st. Here is the full sequence laid out straight. January 11th, flagged by the sheriff's department. No public explanation. January 23rd, a man with an Ozark Trail backpack conducting a camera countermeasure test at a house 6.5 miles from Nancy's home. Before February 1st, the same suspect at Nancy's actual front door. No backpack, no visible weapon, studying the camera. February 1st, he returns. Backpack, gun, holster, mask, gloves, plan. 1:47 a.m. Camera disconnected. 2:28 a.m. Pacemaker signal gone. Nancy is gone. Now let me tell you what they have deployed to find her, because the technology tells you how serious this has become. Law enforcement sources told CBS News that investigators mounted a device called a signal sniffer onto a helicopter and flew it low over the desert landscape north of Tucson. It is a Bluetooth scanning tool designed to detect the specific frequency that Nancy's pacemaker uses to communicate with her phone. If she is alive, if the pacemaker is still functioning, if she is within range when that helicopter passes, the sniffer should register a signal. A company called Bluefly confirmed it provided this technology, describing it as a heat map system for first responders. They have not found a signal. President Trump publicly criticized investigators for announcing this. He said that if the person holding Nancy now knows her pacemaker is a tracking device, bad things could happen. That criticism is not wrong. If whoever has Nancy understands what that device is capable of, they have a clear reason to destroy it. And destroying the pacemaker may not be a separate act from destroying the person wearing it. That disclosure may be the most dangerous leak this investigation has produced. The ransom situation has been a cascade of noise with nothing underneath it. Multiple communications demanding cryptocurrency have been sent to media outlets. TMZ received the first one early in the investigation, a demand for millions of dollars in Bitcoin with a wallet address attached. When the FBI examined the blockchain ledger for that wallet, there was no large deposit waiting. There was a single transaction of under $300. That was the FBI. They seeded the wallet with a small amount and sat back. The moment anyone accesses a monitored crypto wallet, their device fingerprint, their IP address, and their approximate location are captured. That wallet has not moved. Not 1 cent has been touched since the FBI's deposit. A fourth communication to TMZ claimed the sender had seen something south of the border and had been told to stay quiet about it. One man was actually charged. The FBI determined he had fabricated a ransom demand with no connection to the disappearance, attempting to extract money from the chaos. The Guthrie family has stated publicly and plainly that they will pay. They said, "We will pay." Nobody has collected. If this were a professional kidnapping for ransom, proof of life would have come within hours. A video, a photograph, a call. Negotiation would have begun. Money would have moved. None of that has happened, which means either the ransom is theater, a deliberate misdirection to push investigators toward a financial motive that was never real, or the person behind it is too afraid of the FBI's monitoring to touch anything. One scenario describes deception. The other describes fear. Neither describes a professional. But go back to the DNA, because this is what should be keeping whoever did this from sleeping. 2 profiles, 2 unknown males. One from the glove found 2 miles from the house. One from inside the home itself. Neither matches anyone in the family. Neither matches anyone in Cody's. Sheriff Nanos has said the lab work could take up to a year, given the complexity of separating mixed biological material. But the genealogy analysis is not waiting for the lab. Investigative genetic genealogy is the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer after 4 decades of silence. The same process that put Brian Kohberger's name on a warrant in the Idaho murders. It does not require the suspect to have ever submitted their own DNA to 23andMe or Ancestry. It only requires that someone in their family tree did. A second cousin, a great-aunt, a distant relative who uploaded a profile years ago without ever imagining their DNA would one day help trace a crime. From that partial match, investigators build outward, branch by branch, generation by generation, until the branches collapse to a single name. 2 profiles means 2 separate family trees being worked simultaneously. 2 independent networks of relatives who may exist in public genealogy databases. The probability that both people involved in a 2-person operation have 0 family members anywhere in any public database is not low. It is negligible. 1 unknown profile is difficult. 2 is a mathematical certainty of identification. The only question is when. 3 weeks of preparation. The patience to scout a house across multiple visits over multiple weeks. The discipline to rehearse the approach at a separate location. The specific knowledge of that address, that camera, that woman's schedule. Now ask the question, who had that kind of access? The last confirmed person to see Nancy Guthrie alive is her son-in-law. He drove her home on the night of January 31st. He walked her to the door. He says he confirmed she was safely inside. Then he drove the 4 miles back to his own house. For the next 3 hours and 57 minutes, there is no confirmed public account of his location. At 1:47 a.m., someone disabled the camera he had walked past 4 hours earlier. Someone who knew exactly where it was mounted. Someone who knew it was not recording to the cloud. Someone who knew the gate at the front of the property. Someone whose movement through that space carried no hesitation. The physical signature of someone who had passed through it not once or twice but hundreds of times. Body language analysts who reviewed the FBI footage described what they saw as ownership behavior. The suspect does not scan for the camera. He walks directly to it. He does not pause at the door. He reaches toward the lens in a gesture that was described as habitual, the way a person touches a light switch in a room they have navigated in the dark for years. That man has been to that house before. Not recently, repeatedly. The footage does not suggest familiarity. Proves it. And the FBI knew what that footage proved when they chose to release it as a single night. I am not naming the son-in-law in this video. Not yet. But I need you to understand why that name matters before I say it out loud, because when I do, when I walk through his background, his profession, his financial relationship to this family, the document he signed 8 months before Nancy disappeared, and what the people around him have been quietly telling investigators, you will understand why the FBI has returned to his property more times than any other location in this entire investigation. 5 visits. possibly 6. Fox News cameras captured federal agents leaving that house carrying a brown paper bag. In forensic evidence handling, biological material containing DNA, is always transported in paper, never plastic. Plastic seals in moisture and degrades the sample. Whatever was in that bag, investigators believed it was biological and needed to be preserved for a laboratory. His wife's car was towed and impounded. Their septic tank was examined. Security cameras were removed from their property. Neighbors have been interviewed repeatedly, with agents asking specifically about the couple's routines and behavior. On February 16th, the sheriff publicly cleared the entire family. He said they are victims. He said suggesting otherwise is cruel. Maybe he is right. But clearing someone is an investigative status. It reflects the current state of the evidence. It is not permanent. It does not close a door. And in high-profile investigations, publicly clearing a person of interest serves a second purpose. It releases pressure, ends the media presence outside the house, and can allow a guilty person to feel safe enough to stop being careful. Here is where the investigation stands at day 25. No arrest, no named suspect, 2 unidentified DNA profiles from 2 unknown males, a $1 million reward from the Guthrie family, more than 55,000 calls to the sheriff's department, more than 21,000 tips submitted to the FBI, 400 investigators assigned to the case, genetic genealogy in progress, Walmart purchase records under active review, gun shops across Tucson being visited with photographs of the holster, the suspect's shoes, pants, shirt, and jacket close to being identified, a private lab in Florida attempting to separate a mixed DNA sample that could take up to a year. The 911 center in Pima County has been overwhelmed to the point of dysfunction. The dispatch manager went on record asking the public to stop calling unless they have information that is credible and actionable. In the first 18 days of February alone, the department received more than 31,000 calls. Over 23,000 of them were people calling the non-emergency line to share theories, hunches, psychic impressions, and Reddit threads. 23,000 calls filling the lines that investigators need open to receive real information, while an 84-year-old woman remains missing somewhere in the desert. The operational phase of the investigation is winding down. The surge, 400 people on the ground, search and rescue teams, K-9 units, drones, helicopters, customs, and border protection, that phase is ending. ABC News reported that the strongest leads have come up empty, and the case is shifting to a long-term task force structure. Fewer people in the field. More lab work, more data, more waiting. On February 13th, a SWAT team executed a raid on a property in the Tucson area. A man named Luke Daly was detained, along with his 77-year-old mother and a DoorDash driver named Carlos Palace who was making a delivery at the wrong moment. All 3 were released within hours. Their attorney confirmed there was no connection to the Guthrie case. Within minutes of the raid, social media declared that the son-in-law and his mother had been arrested. That was not true. It was fabricated entirely. But it spread because the public has been waiting for an arrest for 25 days and will accept almost any story that looks like resolution. That desperation is not harmless. Every false lead that investigators are forced to respond to is time and resources redirected away from the actual investigation. And every hour the real suspect watches law enforcement chase the wrong person is an hour they feel safer. But here is the thread that is closing. On February 22nd, Sheriff Nanos told NBC News that investigators are approaching a full identification of every article of clothing the suspect was wearing: shoes, pants, shirt, jacket. When those identifications are confirmed, they trigger the same tracking method being used for the backpack. Each item routes to a manufacturer, a retailer, a purchase record, a security camera image. Each receipt is a transaction. Each transaction has a face attached to it somewhere. The belly band holster is already being shown to gun dealers across Tucson. The sheriff described it as having distinctive characteristics. The FBI assembled approximately 24 photographs and is personally visiting local dealers asking if anyone sold this model or recognizes the man who bought it. One shop owner confirmed to NBC News that the FBI came to him with that list. If that buyer paid with a card, the case ends at the register. The net is not closing fast, but it is closing, and the people responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie know it. They are sitting somewhere watching this investigation tighten around every piece of material evidence they left behind. The glove, the DNA, the backpack, the holster, the shoes, each one being traced back toward the hand that carried it. Savannah Guthrie posted a video on day 24. She was crying when she recorded it. She said that every hour, every minute, every second, every long night had been agony. She said her family still believes in a miracle. She said they are blowing on the embers of hope. And then she said something that landed differently than everything else. She said they know their mother may already be gone, that if she is in heaven, they have accepted it. That is not a family expecting a rescue. That is a family preparing themselves for a loss they can feel coming. And while Savannah stands in front of cameras with tears on her face, while her brother Cameron speaks directly to whoever took their mother, while Annie cooperates with every request from law enforcement, the man who drove Nancy home 4 hours before she disappeared has not said a single public word. No statement, no plea, no interview, no post. Complete silence. There is one more video coming, and in it I am going to tell you everything. His name, his profession, the document he signed 8 months before this happened, his financial relationship to this family, the people around him, and what at least one of their records shows, and the reason that every specific detail of this crime, the nitrile gloves, the disabled camera, the 41 minutes, the ownership behavior in that footage, maps more precisely to one profile than to any other. For now, sit with what you already know. The FBI packaged footage from 2 separate nights and told you it was one. The suspect was at that house before the night he took her. He studied it. He practiced. He came back ready. And the man who was the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive has not said one word since she disappeared. If this case matters to you, if you want to be here when the name gets named, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Because what is in that next video is not a theory. It is a documented record that changes the shape of everything you just watched. Share this. Every person who sees it is another set of eyes on a case that still does not have an answer. And Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, somewhere out there tonight, needs as many people looking as possible. Drop a comment. Tell me what you see in this case that others are missing. I read them. The next video is coming. Do not miss it.